Well, guys, I want to welcome you to Overtime, which is where we take Sunday's message further and deeper. And on Sunday, we wrapped up a series that we've been in talking about navigating the season, navigating the holidays with the ups and downs. And I talked specifically about all the Cousin Eddie moments we have in our life. And Cousin Eddie moments represent stress, they represent worry, they represent anxiety. And, this holiday season, I think everything seems to be amplified and we feel the stress and anxiety and all those other things, so much more. And so I talked about our way forward to begin to experience peace. And hopefully that was helpful for you. And today, what I'm really excited to do is talk about that message even further and get some more context and detail. And to help with that, I want to introduce you to Emily Geist, as you see on the screen right there.
Hello.
Welcome, Emily. Yeah. So Emily, the cool thing is that that people may not know is that you and I actually worked together, and you basically ran all of North Point for many, many years, probably 2 or 3 decades, something like
No.
that. But which it was awesome because I got to know you really well, and we had moments of tension and we had moments of celebration, which is like when you have that with somebody, it's like the relationship goes to a much like deeper and better place. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
So yeah. So we got to work together, and then a couple years ago, you sat down and you just said, "Buck, I want to go back to school and get my master's." And so you've been pursuing your master's in social work, and ultimately, I think you want to be on the other side of people in the counseling field. And so I'm really excited to discover some of the things you've been learning, some insights that God's given you, and just to have this conversation on how we can really experience peace in the midst of these holidays and just in the midst of life. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here and excited to do this with you. I feel like a lot of people probably know my husband, Jordan. He is, um, you know, center stage a lot more than I am, but been married to him for almost 5 years, which is crazy. And fun fact, we have the same anniversary as Buck and Jill.
It
So,
is, yeah. And I had the privilege to like marry you
mhm,
on my anniversary / our anniversary. And
yeah.
so we should one day, I don't know if is it awkward to do like a couple anniversary trip?
We should do it. Sounds fun to me.
All right. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny. Yeah. So we've been married almost 5 years and we've got a dog child. His name is Mowgli. Buck loves Mowgli. He really bonded with him in our time working together.
Right here, right in
And
the heart. Hmm.
yep. And that's, our little family. Did work at North Point. I got to work with Buck for a couple of years. And then, yeah, I've been at Texas State getting my master's in social work for the last year and a half. I graduate a week and a half from now. So it's
That's
very soon.
crazy.
Super
Well,
excited. Yeah.
congratulations. That's
Yeah.
so, is it like virtual? Is it going to be a virtual graduation, or is it like you get an email and they're like, hey, you graduated?
Well, they're doing it both ways. So
Okay.
they have an in person, I think, at the stadium, and then they're doing virtual as well. So
Okay.
it's exciting. Yeah.
Are you going to the stadium?
I'm planning on it. We'll see what
Wow.
happens. But yeah, I think so. So
That's
it's
so cool.
exciting.
That's such a huge accomplishment because I mean, you've been
Yeah.
working at the same time, going to school,
Mhm.
getting your master's, taking care of Mogs. I mean, goodness. Isn't that what
Yes.
do you call Mowgli Mogs?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Bear, Mogs, all the names.
Okay. Well, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, congrats. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah. It's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you for hanging out for however much time we're going to be here, talking about Sunday's message and really just talking about ultimately how we can experience peace. And I know you've been on the other side of a lot of individuals. I know you're currently what's it called intern? Are you like interning to where you're?
Yeah. So I've been a graduate student intern
Yeah.
at a counseling agency and gotten to have some clients. And yeah, it's been really neat.
Yeah. And so you're seeing, I mean, real life stuff. And, one of the things I tell my boys this a lot. I said, boys, there's this life thing out here that's happening. And then there's life behind closed doors. And that's really kind of symbolic to go, what's happening in here and what's happening in here and the hardships and difficulties of life. And, the holidays are something that is just exacerbates and I think just amplifies a lot of
Yeah.
those things. And on Sunday, second service, I didn't share it first service, but on second service, I shared, for the holidays, it brings up the reality that my mom's not here. And so we sit around the Christmas tree and, on Christmas morning and that's hard. I mean, there's the real, stressful kind of, pressure, the anxiety, those are so real during this time. And so on Sunday, we talked about it. And I said, I think what we desire is peace. And when I talked about peace, I said, peace is that idea of this internal calmness, this, equilibrium, which is this balance in the midst of that. There's this,
Yeah.
tranquility. I think we desire that. We want to experience that. But that is so hard. And so I'm curious, like for you, just thinking about peace in the midst of the holidays, thinking about peace in the midst of life. Why do you think that's so hard for us to experience?
Yeah. So one thing that Jordan has shared from stage a couple times, so some people may have heard this before, but um, something with my story is I lost both of my parents pretty young.
Hmm.
So my mom passed away when I was 10, and my dad passed away when I was 21. And so I'm definitely with you and the other people who have lost loved ones. The holidays are a lot harder.
Hmm.
They can, definitely bring up feelings of not peace, the opposite of peace.
Right.
They're hard.
Yeah.
And so I think, for me, something that has been tough is it's easy for me to maybe look at other people's families in this season, or
Mm,
look on social media and see what other people's holidays are like or what they're experiencing,
mhm,
and to feel really down or upset about what I don't have,
mhm,
and to kind of get stuck in that. And I think something that has been really perspective shifting for me, is to instead, as much as I can, kind of take a look at what I do have in, this season to be grateful for and the people I do get to celebrate with. Um, I think about being blessed with a really awesome husband and being blessed with some really great extended family to spend holidays with. Um, and just, God's provided in maybe different ways, but has still, given me a lot to be grateful for in this season. And for me, that's something that is just really helpful in kind
mhm.
of finding that peace, and finding that contentment in a harder season.
Yeah, which is yeah, and thanks for sharing that because I know Jordan has alluded to that, but now we get to see you in person,
Yeah.
and that's the reality. My mom is no longer here, and your parents are no longer here, and the holidays are that time that we feel that, and
Yeah.
and I love what you said because I think the more I look around, the more I hear people talking about their mom or people talking about their experiences or their kids being able to be with their grandmother and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it does make it hard, and
Yeah, for
that
sure.
feels like everyday life. I mean, it's happening, and
Hmm.
so I'm sure a lot of people who are listening and watching, they're going, yeah, they're shaking their head, going, yeah, I've experienced that. And it may not be the reality of a loss perhaps, but it may be the reality of a job situation, and they're thinking about this Christmas and going, I don't know how I'm going to afford gifts, and I don't know how I'm not going to go further into debt, and that just brings a lot of pressure. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's something at work and just trying to close a business deal, or maybe it's their parents are coming in town and there's so much stress and strain, and their parents are here, but there's just there's wounds of the past, and now those
Yeah.
wounds are coming to town, and they're going to feel those. And so I just think it's tough. I wish there was. I've said this a lot, and I've probably said it to you at some point. I wish there was a button. You
Yes.
know,
And
it's
I say
like,
it to people too. Yeah.
I know it's so, I would so push it and be like, yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, but I do think, we'll get here a little bit, but I do think God meets us in those moments. I do think we learn
Yeah.
a lot in those moments. But it
Yeah.
requires us to embrace, those moments. And I was talking about that on Sunday. I was talking
Yeah.
about the fact that, I don't think true peace, lasting peace is in the absence of negative thought. I think it's in the presence of negative thought. And
Yeah.
so I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that. And then what are some things that you would just say, practically speaking, are helpful to take some steps towards peace?
Yeah. So, you know, when it comes to embracing the stress and anxiety and those hard situations, I think something that a lot of people tend to do is to get hyper focused on like the outcome of the bad thing.
Mm,
So, you know, things like worry and stress and anxiety, a lot of the time that's actually about stuff that maybe hasn't even happened yet. You know, it's like a fear of what's going to happen.
mhm.
Um, and, you know, obviously we don't want to avoid those things, ignore those things, like numb out or anything like that.
Right.
Um, but I think what can be really helpful in kind of confronting that, and this is, you know, a cliche answer from someone who wants to do counseling, but being on the other side of somebody who can kind of help you discover where that worry and stress and anxiety is coming from,
Mhm.
because it's coming from somewhere. And so, you know, getting in front of a mentor, a friend, or a professional, and trying to really, um, you know, figure out the root of that, where it's coming from. I think, though, at the same time, focusing only on that can also be difficult.
Mhm.
And so I think that's where, you know, supplementing that work with gratitude and trying to see the good, or you know, see where God is showing up,
Mhm.
can be really helpful as you do some of that work, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
And I think what you're saying is so important is oftentimes if we haven't done the work, if I'm hearing you right, if we haven't done the work of identifying, hey, I've got a lot of anxiety. I'm constantly thinking about tomorrow. I'm constantly thinking about the what if and what about, and it hasn't happened,
yeah.
but I'm thinking about that. If you don't do the work, then part of the challenge is you don't know where that's actually originating, like the
Right.
genesis of it. Like, where did that come from? And maybe that had to do with something when you were 5 years old, or 10 years old, or 15 years old. And it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with him, or it has nothing to do with her, or very little to do with him or her or them, in terms of like extended family that are coming to town, or
Yeah.
gifts, or people liking you, or all that kind of stuff that has so much origin in it, that it
Yeah.
really, that if I'm hearing you right, if you don't do the work, it can get really messy. And
Right.
the mess is getting on people that really aren't the originator of it. They may have agitated or triggered something, but they didn't originate it.
Right. Yeah, and I think, you know, bringing other people into that is just huge because, you know, right now more than ever, I think we're super isolated, you
Hmm.
know, with everything going on. And it can be really easy for us to just kind of have all of these things living inside of our brain,
Hmm.
and for us to be, you know, ruminating on it and focusing on it all of the time. And that just doesn't lead to anything productive. You know, we're not going to feel good if we're
Hmm.
just constantly, you know, focusing on what could go wrong, or you know, our fears or the bad. And so, really bringing other people in that are trustworthy, I think, is a really big component of that.
Yeah. And, as you're saying that, I can't help but think about, the Bible. And because that's part of my job, and is to know the Bible, to be able to explain the Bible. But, there's two passages. There's one, the Ecclesiastes passage, that talks about two are better than one, because they have a good return for their work. And if somebody falls, somebody can help them. Because oftentimes when we fall, like, we're not able to see the reasons as to why we fell, or we're not able to see the picture clearly in the midst of falling, or in the midst of that fall. And then the other passage that came to mind as you were talking was in Proverbs, that says, you know, that there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. And the point of that is, in isolation, which you just alluded to, there are things that seem right to us. But because we're isolated and we're by ourselves and we're trying to figure out context in our finite, perspectives, we can make a lot of choices that ultimately can add to the hurt, add to the stress, add to what I said on Sunday, the cousin Eddie moments, that
Yeah.
over the holidays. So I love what you said.
Yeah. Well, and you know, going back to what you were saying Sunday, you know, ultimately, we're not going to find that peace outside of God.
Hmm.
And so that needs to be our starting point, and that's, you know, where that peace is going to come from long term. Um, and then, you know, I think trying to, you talked about or asked about like what are some practical things that we can be doing to
Hmm.
help us in gaining peace. There's a lot of practical things I think we can do that point us back to God and point us back to what He says,
Hmm.
um, that can just remind us of that peace and how it does come from Him and nothing else.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And
and
that's exactly,
so,
or go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, the slight delay here. I'm like, oh no, oh, yeah. What for real? What were you saying, or
Well,
what were
I
you
was
going
going to just say one thing Jordan and I have been really trying to do in this season, with the holidays and everything being really difficult, is um, like as much gratitude as we can. And so, a
to?
specific exercise we've been trying to do is um, thinking about past things in our life that we have to be really grateful for. So, whether it's like a memory from a trip that we really enjoyed, or
Mm.
really good connection with people in our community group, or an awesome, dinner with family, or whatever it may be. Um, and really trying to name those moments, like giving them
Hmm.
a 1 or 2 word name, writing them down, and having this like basically bank of gratitude memories for us to look back on.
Hmm.
But as we're doing that, being able to thank God for those too, and kind of bring Him into the picture. And so being able to, be reminded that He is providing all of these things for us, and that
Right.
He like wants these joy filled, like wonderful experiences for us. And that has been really life giving for us and encouraging for us to just be reminded of, all these great ways that God has provided for us and given us so much to be grateful for in this season. That's been a neat exercise for us.
Man, I love that. And so, are you guys putting those anywhere? Like when you write them down, do you put them like on your fridge or in your bathroom or?
Yeah, so right now we've just got like a note going in our iPhones. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great idea. You could put it in a jar and pull one out, or journal them, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But just having those moments to pull from, and really being able to sit in it and share with one another and reminisce on what that moment was like,
Yeah.
can totally switch, the mindset, which is really cool.
I love that. And that's a little bit what I was alluding to on Sunday where, I was talking about what Paul says in Philippians chapter 4. And one of the things I didn't get into, I mean, he gave several different applications and there were lots of observations in that passage. But one of the things I camped on was the idea to go where he said to think about such things and to
Hmm.
think about things that are praiseworthy, think about things that are excellent, think about things that are true. And, I connected those much very specifically to God, like who is God? Like that God made you in his image, like you have worth and significance and value. You're a reflection of God, like that's who you are. And then
Yeah.
the truth of Jesus and the truth of what God did through Christ to demonstrate his love and what Christ did for you, and the reality that one day God's going to connect all the dots and we just don't have time to connect. Time is a prerequisite to be able to give context and connect life, and we only have 80, 90, 100, maybe 110. In your case, probably like 120. But
Yeah, hopefully not.
yeah, well, that gets pretty old. But I mean, we just don't have the time to connect all those dots. So
Right.
I love what you said, because I think even if I think it's really good to take those things we're grateful for to go like, what has God done in my life? And to
Mhm.
put those in your iPhone or to put those in your bathroom mirror or somewhere where you can like look at them. And there's something about writing things down that's weird. It's like
Yeah.
feels so rudiment or just elementary. And you're
Yeah.
like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. And then it's like, but if you do, you're like, man, that's pretty powerful. Like
Yeah.
that changes things. And so writing down not only what you're thankful for, but alongside of that, I think writing down some things that are true about God. Like, I
Mhm.
am forgiven. Like Jesus did say, it's finished. God's given me everything I need for life and godliness. That's one I think about all the time when I'm like, oh, I need this and this. And what about the boys? And what about, my marriage? And what
Yeah.
about, gifts and holidays? And, and I get all, and I'm like, okay, God's given you everything you need, Buck. Like, just remember what's true. And, it's like one of those things, writing it down, putting it as a reminder, so helpful. I love that. What is
Yeah.
there anything? Let me ask you this. So the idea of like, talking about where I said, thinking is great. Like, hey, I want to think, because that's like the key to peace is to think, and it's active thinking. It's not like, oh, I just thought about this thought, but it's like really
Yeah.
like let it soak in, let some osmosis happen with that truth in your life, and think about the outcomes, the implications, think about what's true as a result of that. So it's active thinking, but the reality is life is happening. Waves are coming,
Hmm.
and some big waves are coming.
Yeah.
So how would you suggest like we balance that? Because it's like I'm thinking, but yet waves are coming,
Yeah.
and my humanity keeps getting smashed, and I'm like, and there,
Yeah.
times we want to give up, times we want to just throw the white flag, put the white flag
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things in that. I think, going back to spending consistent time with God,
Hmm.
in those seasons, and really always, but I think it's especially important in the seasons that are really hard when it feels like the wave is, consistently hitting us.
Yeah,
Because it might be that we are needing to remind ourselves what's true and to reflect on what God has done for us and provided for us, you know, daily or multiple times a day, for it to
hmm,
not feel overwhelming. I think also, going back to being on the other side of people, I think
hmm,
having people who you can bring in and who know what's hard for you right now, and what those waves are that keep hitting you,
yeah,
for them to be able to check in on you and to kind of help keep you steady in those moments, I think can be really helpful.
yeah.
um, yeah, I think those two, good connection with God, good connection with other people, are both
So
huge.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think, I've alluded to it a couple times on Sunday. We're just not, even if you take God out of the equation, I mean, science would say that we are not built to be alone. Like we are
Yeah.
built for connection. We're built for relationship. We're designed with that in mind. So I love that. I think, life is hard enough. I need somebody else to be able to go, hey, help,
Yeah.
how can I think through this, or, process this? I love that.
Yeah. Well, and
And
I love to I love that, like, when you were talking on Sunday, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever, like all this whole list of things that you
yeah,
can think on, you can bring gratitude into that. So you can think about, you know, I, one for Jordan and I is like a vacation we took, and there was these beautiful mountains and snow and all of these things,
hmm,
and for us to just take that in and enjoy this like beautiful nature that God has created for us to enjoy.
hmm,
Like he's created so that we can delight in that. For us to just reflect on that moment and to enjoy that, is such like an excellent, praiseworthy thing for us to be thinking about, and
yeah.
it again totally changes the perspective and kind of grounds you,
Hmm.
which is really cool.
Yeah, I love that. And I think as we've been talking, I think what we're getting at, or it sounds like we're getting at, and let me know if I'm hearing you right, is
Yeah.
that in life, a mentor of mine said, Buck, you need to have your motivators, because
Hmm.
like life can get hard. Doing the work is hard. Like when you're really like going, hey, where's this? Where you come from? Where's all my anxiety? That's hard work, and you've got to have these motivators in life. Think of them like maybe pillars that are holding you up.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing is true, especially during the holidays, or, when stress and everything is kind of amplified. We've got to have our pillars. And it sounds like, what we're alluding to and what you're talking about is we're just building those pillars. And it's
Yeah.
the pillar of gratitude, and writing it down. It's the pillar of, maybe getting outside and looking at God's creation. The Psalms say it declares his glory, like, and it's worthy of praise. And, maybe write that down as well. And, spending time with God. It's like I said on Sunday, it's like, it's, I wish there was the button to make you
Yeah.
like understand who God is, and for him to be more real, and for you to know those truths, to be able to say, oh, what is true and what is praiseworthy? Well, you gotta do the work. And the work is
Hmm.
spending time reading the scriptures. And so it's like all these like little, habits, if you will, or little like, these are motivators to go, man, when that wave comes and it's big, how do you
Yeah.
withstand it? And
Yeah.
being connected to people all those are great motivators. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anything else you would add to just that context or?
Yeah, I mean, I think, specifically thinking in how this looks for me, I like what you're saying about writing it down,
Mhm.
because I I do not like journaling. I don't like writing things down. I know this about myself.
Mhm.
Every time somebody says, and even, when you and I would meet, you would be like, "Hey, you need to like go write that out or write," and I would be
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, yeah, okay, whatever."
Sure. Sounds good.
Yeah, sure. But really, like writing things down is, I think, really helpful in helping us understand what is true because it does get it out of our head, right? And so
Mhm.
in our head, it's like this big, swirly gray thing,
Mm.
all of these like anxieties and fear and what's true and what's not true and how am I feeling. It all is just like swirling around in there.
Mhm.
And so, what you were saying, writing it down and being able to say, like, this is what happened. This is how I'm feeling about it. This is what I'm thinking about it. And here's what I know is true. And really being able to back that up with what God says and what the Bible says um, is really helpful. And, for me, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, even taking that a step further, something that I have really enjoyed doing recently um, is bringing like a prayer element into that. And so
Mm.
not only just writing it down, but once I've kind of gotten it all out on the piece of paper in front of me, um, getting to really like hand it over to God at that point, and remind myself, he gets to take care of this, and I
Right.
can trust him with this. That's what I know is true. And so for me, I think that has been a huge giver of peace, knowing that I ultimately don't have to figure it all out, and
Mhm.
to literally envision myself giving it over to him now that I've kind
Right.
of gotten it out in front of me, um, has brought a lot of peace for me recently.
Man, that is fantastic. I love that. I because I love what you said because it there's so much energy and it's confusing energy when it's kind of bundled up in us.
Yeah.
When we keep it hidden, we keep it confined, it just grows, and it expands and we're like and it adds to the worry and adds to the anxiety. And how many times, and this is amazing that we're as you're sitting on the other side of people where you may not say anything, but they just actually got it out. Like
Mm-hmm.
they, were able to express it. We're able to talk about the worry, talk about what's going on with their parents, talk about the relationships. And then without saying a word, they're like, man, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
And it is like, and that's so important in this holiday season. It's so important in life with whatever it is, but to get it out, I love what you said is, like quit kind of keeping it hidden, but actually like talk through it, write it down,
Yeah.
think through those thoughts, because a lot of times I think when we get it out it's like, oh, okay, well, here's what's going on. And
Mhm.
then I love the idea to turn that over to God, like, God, you're big enough.
Yeah.
God can handle it. I mean, by definition,
Mhm.
he is God and we are not. And he
Right.
and he loves us and he's for us and he cares and he hasn't left us alone. He's given us the very Holy Spirit to go like, okay, God, you can handle it. I love that. I think that is a great, great idea. So, Emily, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you for just hanging out, having this combo. And it's so much fun to see you and to think about, what God has for you in your future and thinking about, hey, you're graduating and just it feels like, it's going to be a flash, but it's just a few days and then boom, you're off into, this whole new world. And so I'm excited for, what God has for you. And I'm also really grateful for you just spending the time today, just talking about this. This is such an important conversation. And I'm just curious as we've been talking just more globally, holistically, is there anything else that you would just, say or add as we wrap up?
Hmm. That's a broad question.
I know. I mean, anything in the world about stress, anything in the world
About
about worry.
anything.
Yeah. No, I think what you said is awesome. I just, if there's anything else that you would go like, oh yeah, this one last thing came to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think just a reminder that, you don't have to feel that aloneness and that, like, peace. What is the opposite word of peace? I keep, like, getting
Lack of
stuck on that,
peace.
lack of peace.
Yeah,
But you don't
yeah.
have to feel that alone. There are a lot of people experiencing that right now. I think now, probably more than ever, that's what most people are feeling.
Mhm,
And so just knowing you're not alone in it, knowing, North Point has really good resources if that's something that you're experiencing.
mhm.
If you want to get on the other side of someone and you don't know how, um, North Point has the resources to help with that. And so just reminding people you don't have to figure this all out by yourself because
I love
it's
that.
big and it's overwhelming. And, we're here to help. So,
Yeah, and I love what you said, and I just wanna if you're listening in or you're watching, exactly what Emily is alluding to, you don't have to do this alone, and make sure call the North Point offices. If you're like, "I don't know who I can trust. I don't have anybody that I really can share what's going on," then call us. Or if you're like, "How do I process this?" "This is what happened, is I thought about this," or,
mhm.
just, we've got 4 talks, which are on our website, and if you can't find them, just call us, and we would love to help and just really be those pillars, to really help
Yeah.
us in this time to find our motivators because, cousin Eddie moments, as much as the good moments, I think great moments are to come in the next month and a half with the holidays. But I also think the cousin Eddie moments are coming. And so what can we do?
Yeah.
And I love what you said. So Emily, thanks for being part of this. Thanks for what you're
Yes,
doing.
of course.
Really grateful. And again, thanks for the time, my friend.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. See ya.